Okay, real talk. When you hear the word Viking, what comes to mind? Probably big dudes with horned helmets, right? Well, plot twist. Those helmets never existed. The Vikings made that up to scare people, and Hollywood ran with it. But here's what is true. A group of farmers and fishermen from frozen Scandinavia somehow became the most feared warriors in Europe. They sailed further than anyone thought possible, all the way to North America, 500 years before Columbus. They founded cities that still exist today, from Dublin to Kiev, and they did it all without a central government, without a massive army, and without even thinking of themselves as an empire. So how does a bunch of independent raiders from Norway, Sweden, and Denmark end up changing the entire world? How do you build power when you don't even have a king? And why did it all fall apart just as fast as it started? We're about to find out. Let's do this.
Schemes in the shadows, plans in the light. Kings and conquerors chasing the night. Brick by brick, their stories grow tall. But every empire learns how to fall.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Season 2 of Blueprints of Power, the show where we break down how history's greatest empires were built, how they ruled, and how they fell. I'm Jack.
I'm Lily.
And I'm Charlie, and I'm hyped because today we're talking about Vikings.
Dude, yes, this is the one everyone's been asking for.
I've been waiting for this since episode 1. Vikings are metal.
They really are. And here's the thing that's wild about the Vikings. They weren't technically an empire in the traditional sense. They didn't have one capital city or one emperor. They were more like a movement.
A movement?
Yeah. For about 300 years, from roughly 800 to 1100 AD, people from Scandinavia just started exploring, raiding, trading, and settling all over Europe and beyond. They weren't united under one ruler. They were independent crews with their own leaders, but they all shared a culture, a language, and a way of life.
So it's like if a bunch of garage bands all started touring at the same time and accidentally took over the music industry.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, so if they're not a traditional empire, why are we covering them?
Because they built something. They didn't just raid and disappear. They founded kingdoms, established trade networks, influenced languages, and left a legacy that's still alive today. The Viking Age changed Europe forever.
All right, I'm sold. So today we're covering the rise, the reign, and the fall of the Viking Age, how a bunch of Norse sailors became legends.
And probably did some extremely Viking things along the way.
Definitely. Let's start at the beginning. Lily, how did this whole thing even start?
So, the Vikings came from Scandinavia, modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. We're talking late 700s AD. These were cold, harsh lands with long winters and not a lot of farmland. People lived in small communities, farmed what they could, fished, and survived.
Sounds cozy.
It was rough, but they had one major advantage. They were incredible sailors.
Like, how incredible.
They built these ships called longships. Narrow, fast, and super flexible. They could sail across the open ocean, but they could also go up rivers because they didn't need deep water. That meant they could raid places no one else could reach.
Wait, so they could sail up rivers?
Yep. They'd sail up rivers deep into enemy territory, attack before anyone knew they were coming, and then vanish.
That's like a cheat code.
So why did they start raiding in the first place?
A few reasons. 1, they needed resources. Scandinavia didn't have a lot of wealth, but Europe did. 2, their population was growing and there wasn't enough land. And 3, they had the technology to do it. Once they realized they could sail anywhere and take what they wanted, they did.
When did it officially start?
The Viking Age is usually said to have started in 793 AD, when Vikings raided a monastery in England called Lindisfarne.
Why a monastery?
Because monasteries were rich. They had gold, silver, religious artifacts, and they were totally undefended. Monks weren't exactly warriors.
So Vikings just rolled up like, thanks for the treasure, see ya?
Pretty much. And the English were horrified. They'd never seen anything like it. The Vikings came out of nowhere, struck fast, and disappeared. It was psychological warfare.
So that's the beginning. One raid, and suddenly everyone in Europe knows about Vikings.
Exactly. And after Lindisfarne, it didn't stop. Over the next few decades, Viking raids spread across England, Ireland, France, and even into the Mediterranean.
Wait, they went to the Mediterranean?
Yep. Some Swedish Vikings even made it all the way to the Byzantine Empire and became the emperor's personal bodyguards. They were called the Varangian Guard.
Hold on, Vikings became bodyguards for the Byzantine emperor.
Yes, they were that respected as warriors.
That's insane.
Okay, so they're raiding everywhere. But you said they also settled places. How does that work?
So raiding was just the first phase. Once they realized certain places were worth staying in, they started settling. In the 800s and 900s, Vikings founded cities like Dublin in Ireland, York in England, and they even settled in northern France.
Wait, France?
Yep. The French king was so tired of getting raided that he basically said, "Fine, you can have this land if you stop attacking us." That land became Normandy, which literally means land of the Northmen.
So the Vikings just got a piece of France?
And they became Christian, married into local families, and over time, they became the Normans. And guess what? The Normans later conquered England in 1066.
Wait, so the Vikings' descendants conquered England?
Full circle.
That's wild. So they went from raiders to settlers to conquerors.
Exactly, and that's the rise. They started as desperate sailors looking for resources, and within a century, they had influence all over Europe and beyond.
I feel like we're just getting started.
We are, because now we need to talk about what made them so powerful. What was their secret?
All right, quick pause. But don't go anywhere because we're about to break down exactly what made the Vikings so unstoppable. But real quick, if you're loving this episode, do us a huge favor and hit follow or subscribe. Seriously, it helps so much. We're trying to make this the best history show for kids and families, and we can't do it without you. Also, tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your teachers. Heck, share it on social media if you're old enough. We want everyone to know how cool history actually is, and if you have a minute, leave us a review. We read every single one, and it seriously makes our day. Coming up in the next few episodes, we're covering the Meiji Empire, the Zulu Empire, and the Tang Dynasty. It's gonna be epic. Alright, back to the Vikings. Let's talk about their power.
Okay, so the Vikings are raiding, settling, and basically scaring everyone in Europe. Lily, what made them so powerful? What was their secret recipe?
Great question. I'd say there are 4 main ingredients: their ships, their culture, their adaptability, and their reach.
Let's start with the ships. You said they were game changers.
Totally. The longship is maybe the most important Viking innovation. It was sleek, fast, and could carry about 30 to 60 warriors. But the genius part was the shallow draft, meaning it didn't need deep water. So they could sail across the North Sea, then turn and go straight up a river into the heart of a kingdom.
Nobody else could do that.
Nope. Most ships back then needed deep harbors. The Vikings could beach their ships on any shore and just start walking inland.
That's like having an all-terrain vehicle in a world of sedans.
Exactly. And they were also incredible navigators. They didn't have compasses, but they used the sun, stars, and even landmarks to cross open ocean. Some historians think they might have used sunstones, crystals that helped them find the sun even on cloudy days.
That's actually so smart.
Right? And because of those ships, they went everywhere. They sailed to Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. A Viking settlement was found in Newfoundland, Canada, dating to around 1000 AD.
Wait, the Vikings made it to America 500 years before Columbus?
Yep.
Why don't we learn this in school?
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so the ships were huge. What about their culture?
Their culture was all about honor, bravery, and reputation. Vikings believed that your reputation was everything. If you were a coward, you were nobody. But if you were brave and earned glory in battle, your name would live forever.
So it was like clout.
Basically, yeah, Viking clout. And they also had this belief system around the afterlife. They thought that if you died bravely in battle, you'd go to Valhalla, a warrior's paradise where you'd feast and fight forever.
Okay, that's hardcore.
So they literally didn't fear death?
Not if it meant honor, and that made them terrifying opponents. Imagine fighting someone who believes dying gloriously is the ultimate win.
Yeah, that's a tough matchup.
And beyond battle, they were also poets, storytellers, and artists. They carved runes, made jewelry, told sagas, these long epic poems about heroes and gods. The culture was rich.
Wait, so they weren't just brutes?
Not at all. A lot of Vikings were traders and explorers. They traded furs, amber, and slaves all the way from Scandinavia to the Middle East. Some of them were farmers who never raided anyone.
So Viking was more like a job description than an ethnicity?
Kind of. The word Viking actually comes from an Old Norse word that means something like pirate raid. So technically, you went Viking. It was something you did, not necessarily who you were.
Mind blown.
Okay, so ships and culture, what else?
Adaptability. The Vikings were incredible at adjusting to new situations. When they raided, they learned the local weaknesses. When they settled, they adapted to local customs. In England, they married into local families. In France, they became Christian. In Russia, Swedish Vikings called the Rus founded the state that eventually became Russia.
Wait, Russia is named after Vikings?
Basically, yeah, the Rus were Swedish Vikings who sailed down rivers and set up trade routes. They eventually mixed with the Slavic people there, and that became the foundation of Kievan Rus, early Russia.
So Vikings are connected to like half of Europe?
At least. And the last ingredient is reach. The Vikings didn't just stay local, they had this insane network. They connected Scandinavia to England, Ireland, Iceland, France, Russia, the Byzantine Empire, and even the Middle East. They were like the ancient world's global network.
So they're not just warriors. They're explorers, traders, settlers, and culture shapers.
Exactly.
Okay, but here's my question. If they were so powerful and spread out everywhere, why didn't they just take over?
Yeah, what stopped them?
That's the thing. They were never trying to build one unified empire. Each group of Vikings had their own leader, their own goals. Some wanted land, some wanted treasure, some wanted glory. There was no central Viking government.
So they were powerful but not organized?
Right, and that's actually what leads to their fall.
Oh, okay, I see where this is going.
So they're everywhere. They're feared. They're thriving.
And then what goes wrong?
Before we get into how the Viking Age came to an end, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you for listening. Blueprints of Power is a passion project for the three of us, and we're building it for curious kids and families like you. If you're enjoying the show, please share it with someone. Maybe a friend who loves history, or a parent who's always asking what you're listening to, or even a teacher who might play it in class. And if you haven't already, please leave us a review or a rating. It really helps other people find the show, and it helps us know what you want to hear more of. Next week, we're diving into the Meiji Empire. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, time to talk about how even the mighty Vikings eventually fell. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the Vikings are at their peak. They're raiding, settling, trading, founding kingdoms. What brings it all down?
The Viking Age didn't end with one big defeat. It was more like a slow fade. And it happened for a few key reasons: Christianity, stronger kingdoms, and the Vikings themselves changing.
Christianity?
Yeah. As the Vikings settled in places like England, France, and Ireland, they started converting to Christianity. And once they became Christian, they stopped raiding churches and monasteries. That was a big part of what made them Vikings in the first place.
So religion changed their identity.
Exactly. By the year 1000, most of Scandinavia had converted to Christianity. Kings like Harald Bluetooth in Denmark and Olaf Tryggvason in Norway were pushing Christianity hard. And once you're Christian, you're part of the European system. You're not an outsider anymore.
So they went from rebels to part of the establishment?
Pretty much.
What about the kingdoms? You said they got stronger.
Right. In the beginning, the Vikings were successful because Europe was fragmented. There were lots of small kingdoms that couldn't defend themselves. But by the thousands, places like England and France were more unified and better organized. They built better defenses, bigger armies, and they learned Viking tactics.
So Europe leveled up.
Exactly. England, for example, was united under strong kings who could actually fight back. In 1066, the last great Viking invasion happened when Harald Hardrada of Norway tried to conquer England. He lost at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, and that's considered the end of the Viking Age.
Wait, so one battle ended it?
It was symbolic. Harald Hardrada was this legendary warrior king, and when he was defeated, it showed that the Viking era was over. Ironically, just a few weeks later, William the Conqueror, who was descended from Vikings, invaded England from Normandy and won.
So the Vikings lost as Vikings but won as Normans?
Kind of, yeah.
That's such a weird twist.
Right? And the third reason the Viking Age ended is that the Vikings themselves changed. They stopped being raiders and became kings, earls, and nobles. They built churches, established laws, and integrated into European society. The wildness was tamed.
So they basically retired?
In a way, their descendants became part of the kingdoms they once raided. The Viking Age didn't end because they were defeated. It ended because they evolved.
So it's not a fall, it's a transformation.
Exactly. And their legacy didn't disappear. Viking DNA, language, and culture are still present in England, Ireland, Iceland, Russia, and beyond. They shaped the medieval world.
That's actually kind of beautiful. They didn't lose. They just became something else.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so we've covered the rise, the reign, and the fall of the Viking Age. Now the big question, what can we learn from all of this?
I'll go first. My takeaway is adaptability wins. The Vikings didn't have one strategy. They raided when it worked, they traded when it worked, they settled when it worked. They were flexible, and that's how they survived for 300 years in a world that was constantly changing.
I love that. Lily?
Mine is about decentralization. The Vikings never had one leader or one capital, and in some ways, that was their strength. They couldn't be destroyed in one battle because there was no one center to target. But it was also their weakness. They couldn't fully unite. It's a reminder that power structures matter. Sometimes being spread out is good. Sometimes you need unity.
That's deep. All right, mine is about legacy. The Vikings are remembered as warriors, but their real legacy is the cities they founded, the trade routes they opened, and the cultural mixing they caused. Power isn't just about conquest. It's about what you leave behind.
Dang, that's good.
Really good.
Thanks, guys. All right, before we go, next week we're talking about the Meiji Empire. In less than 50 years, Japan went from a feudal samurai society to a fully industrialized world power.
I am so ready.
It's going to be wild.
It really is. All right, everyone, thanks so much for hanging with us on Blueprints of Power. If you loved this episode, share it with someone, leave us a review, and we'll see you next time.
I'm Lily.
I'm Charlie.
I'm Jack, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.